Hey guys, tonight we're making a leaf themed earring and bracelet set. I'm using a copper themed leaf chain, and these are tiny little leaves. This is a copper tone color, and I have some different shades. I've got like a gunmetal, antique brass, and some silver, but I wanted to make a fall looking set today, so I chose the copper. I went ahead and cut off 12 inches of the chain so that I could have 8 inches for the bracelet and 2 inches for each earring. So that's going to be 2, 4, and 8, which is 12. You're going to need some 4mm bicones, and I'm using some Swarovski crystals. I am mixing my colors up with orange and kind of like a topaz color. Those are 4mm bicones, and you're going to need 11 of each color, or if you do all the same color, you're going to need 22. And then you'll also need a 6mm round. I'm actually using a faceted, and this is a check glass, kind of an amber color. I'm going to be attaching these to some head pins in a copper tone color that's going to match my leaf chain. I'm just going to be making some simple loops or wrapped loops depending on how much wire I have and how much I want to play with. Since I'm going to do 22 of these, I'm probably just going to make the simple loop. And then you're going to need a lobster clasp for your bracelet, a split ring, and you're going to try to coordinate all of this in the copper colors because you don't want to mix your metals. And I'm going to attach my lobster clasp with this little 4mm jump ring. Forgot to mention earlier, I did use some French style ear wires in order to attach the 2-inch pieces of chain on each ear wire. And then I also wanted to make the bracelet to match my earrings, so whenever I go to do that, because there's so many leaves already on this bracelet, I'm not going to need that many stones. So I'm probably going to use, I'd say, another 10 bicones, and then I'm going to use another probably 10 of these round stones here. So in all for the bracelet, 20 of the stones and some more head pins. Okay, so in order for me to get the chain apart, I just wanted to cut these links. A lot of times the chain will already have open links, but mine did not. So I just measured out the 2 inches of the leaf chain that I wanted and picked whatever ring was there at the 2-inch mark. And then I came in with my flush cutters, which are these kind of flattened on the back cutters. I came in and made a cut right there on the ring, and now it looks like a jump ring, like a little 4mm jump ring. If your leaf chain already has the slit, then you don't need to do that process. Alright, so then I just opened up my ring and I popped on the little ear wire so that now I have the earring here, and I've got 2 of them. For tools, you're going to need a round-nosed plier. I like to use these bent nose pliers for my right hand so that I can get into tight spaces if I need to. And a flat nose plier so that you can hold with your left hand everything to be steady as you're making your wraps or your loops or whatever you're turning. And of course your flush cutters. If you don't have the flush cutters, that's okay. You can use your standard cutters if you need them for opening the rings. You will need them to trim off whatever wire from the head pins that you're not going to use. I want to make a simple loop. And what that means is I'm just going to create a loop and cut it off rather than wrapping it around the stem. You can do the wrapped loops if you'd like. They are more secure when you're making things that you're worried about them popping off, but since this is going to kind of blend into the leaf chain, I'm not going to be too worried about it. In order to do these simple loops or wrapped loops, you just start out the same way. I come down about 1/4 of an inch down on my round nose pliers. I'm holding it horizontally, so I want to push it with my thumb to where it goes across the top of my plier to make a 90-degree bend. I'm going to reposition my pliers to where I'm in a vertical position now. And then I'm going to take either my index finger or my middle finger and just pull that wire around the top of my plier. And that is what I like to call the question mark. And since I'm going to make this a simple loop, I'm going to put this back on the bottom plier here. And then I'm going to switch to my other hand so that I can pull the tail of that wire back towards myself And since there's only one bead on here, this is a little precarious because you don't really have that much leverage. So now at this point, if you wanted to make the wrapped loop, you could just wrap this around that stem. I'm just going to make the simple loops because it's faster, since I'm going to be making 22 of these for the earrings. And take this off. Then I'm going to come in here with my flush cutters, and I want the back end going up against the wire stem because I want it to be flush up against that stem when I cut it off. Give it a trim. You can recycle or dispose of the wire. If you're using sterling silver or gold filled wire, I would definitely recycle that because it can be melted, but base metals I wouldn't do anything with unless it's a piece that you can use for a wire wrapping project. I have a little bit of a gap there, so I'm just going to come in and give it a little squeeze. And if you wanted to, you could come in with your round nose plier if you felt like you needed to close it a little bit more and give it a turn to where you're now touching the stem here. So there is one simple loop. I'm going to make another 20 in total of those, and then I will be putting the larger 6mm rounds onto their head pins and then popping all of these onto the leaf earrings. Okay, just to show you the difference, I went ahead on this larger one here on the left and did the wrapped loop so that you could see the difference. And because this is a larger stone and it's going to be on the end of the earring, I prefer the wrapped loop because it will be exposed, whereas the simple loops are okay for these smaller 4mm bicones since they're going to be hidden within the leaves. And now I'm going to show you how to make a wrapped loop. I'm going to pop the larger bead onto my ear wire, and it's the same process really. It's just where you cut it off as a simple loop, now you're going to be wrapping it around the stem. So I'm going to be on this last, if I did 1/4 of an inch, it'd be about right there. Notice, the further down that you get, the wider your stem is going to be. This is going to be a wrapped loop, so I'm okay with it being a little bit more of a gap. So I'm going to do a true 1/4 of an inch here. I'm going to push this over my plier with my thumb so that I get that 90-degree bend. Okay. Now I want to reposition it. When you reposition it, I'm taking this out of the pliers in order to show you guys, but when you reposition it, you're not really going to be taking it off the plier. So pretend I just made my 90-degree bend, and instead of me taking the plier out like I did a minute ago, I'm just repositioning it to where now I am vertical, and that I can pull this tail up over the top of my pliers. So just pull it up and over the top to where you kind of get like a coat hanger effect. And then you're going to take it off of the top plier, put it on your bottom plier, and you're just going to hand it off from my right hand to my left hand so that now I can actually pull this tail towards myself in order to hug the bottom loop to make my circle that I need. Okay, so then I'm just going to be taking this tail and wrapping it around the base. I've got to clear the end of my pliers here, so I've got to go kind of at a downward angle, but then I'm coming back up as I clear that and coming up really nice and tight. And so I can continue to push this around that base with my fingers, or I can use my bent nose pliers to help me out. And I prefer these bent nose pliers anyway because then I can do a push and pull around the base and get that wire as tight as I want it. You want the wraps to go right beside each other. You can even reposition these if you need to by taking it off the plier. You can give it a squeeze if you feel like you need to, but don't squeeze too hard because you might mar up your wire. I'm going to take another twist here. You don't have to take it off of the plier. I'm kind of at a weird angle here trying to film this for you, so I am taking it off, putting it back on, and just pulling it around. But if you want to go in one swoop without taking it off and on, you can do that. And you just want to fill in this gap here around the stone. So now I can take this off, and I still have just a hair of a gap here towards the bottom. And when I cut this wire off, I'm going to use my bent nose pliers to then push that little tail this here that's kind of sticking out, into that gap. And it's easier to do that when you have a little bit of leverage, so put it back on your round nose pliers and then come around here with the bent nose pliers to push that back in the gap. And if you're working with glass or crystal, you want to be sure that you're careful not to scratch up bead. I've gone as far as I can go and I still have a little bit of that tail out, so cover it with your fingers and snip off the excess. That way it doesn't get into your way, it doesn't snag your clothes. So now I have a nice wrapped loop to go with my other wrapped loop, and this is what's going to be hanging from the very bottom of my earring here, whereas the little bicones will be up through the leaves. In order for me to add this last bead onto my jump ring here so that it hangs from the earring as a dangle, it's like the final little sparkly charm, I am either going to need to come in here and give this a snip, essentially creating a jump ring out of it, or I've got plenty of these 4mm jump rings that are in the same copper color where it's already got the slit, so I can just open this up, snag my bead dangle, and then put it on. So that's what I'm going to do here. And then in order to open up a jump ring, which I've shown in my previous videos, I like to do the movement in the right hand with my bent nose pliers and keep the left hand stationary with the flat nose pliers. And I'm going to either push this away from myself or pull it towards myself in order to open the door. That's just the term that I use. You don't want to open this from side to side like a U shape, because then it will distort the strength of the jump ring. So I'm going to push this away from myself on the right hand side, which just opened it up like that. Then I can pop my bead dangle on, and then I can put this onto that last ring of the leaf chain, which is right here. Now I want to close that up, so again I'm just going to be the stationary side here on the left and then do the movement on the right. So now since it's away from myself, I need to pull it towards myself in order to close the door. So with the right hand and the bent nose pliers, just pull that back towards myself. Okay, now that is closed, but I'm going to give it a little squeeze just to be sure I'm lined up. I've got 11 various colors for each of the bicones. Now what I want to do is I'm just going to be popping these little bicones with the simple loops at various parts along my chain here and altering colors, so that it just gives it kind of a fall effect as far as the orange tones and the topaz tones. And because this is a simple loop, it's going to be very easy. Since all of these are soldered rings, that's another reason why I opted for the simple loops on all of these bicones. Not only just because it was quicker, but it's just going to be a lot easier. I can then take my bent nose pliers, and just the way that I opened up a jump ring, I'm going to pull this up here on the simple loop so that that's now opened, and I can just pop that onto one of the rings here. Okay, so I just popped it on there, and then I need to close that back up. So the same direction, or the same way that I did opening and closing the door on the jump ring, I'm going to do that same thing for my bicone. There's really no rhyme or reason to this because the sparkle is going to be going all the way down the chain. So you can just put these, I'm staggering my colors since I chose two different colors of the bicones. You can just put these on opposite sides of these round rings. So I've got this topaz, the next one I'm going to do is orange, so I'm going to come down, let's see how many that's going to be. I'm going to come down 2 rings and put it on the right hand side with an orange one. You've got the topaz color on one side, and you've got the orange on the other side here, and I'm going to continue that down my leaf dangle. Okay, so right here is the first earring, and you can see all of the different bicones that I added on there, and then the wrapped round bead is on the very bottom. I'm going to do that on this second earring. So I've got 9 of the 4mm bicones that have the simple loop. And then I have 6 of the 6mm rounds that are the wrapped loop as far as what I'm going to add on to the bracelet. So I have all the looping done and everything. What I need to do now is put the split ring on one side and then add the lobster clasp on the other side so that will get the bracelet to where I could put it on my wrist. And then I'm just going to do the same process that I did as far as the earrings and attaching all of my little charms here. So I have this handy plier, and it actually looks like a bird beak. It has a little nub that comes down from the top and it's flat on the bottom, so that when you take that nub and put it in the little slip that is in that split ring, which these are just tiny versions of key rings if you want to look at it that way, but it opens that up just so you got enough room then to slide this on whatever you're trying to put it on. And I'm going to put it on this end ring if I can get a hold of it. And once you've got it started, then you can take it off of the tool, and I usually just grab my bent nose pliers and start pulling that around until it gets all the way on that split ring. Okay, so there's one end of my bracelet now. And I like these split rings because they're just more secure. So now on the other end, I'm going to be taking a 4mm jump ring, opening that up. This time I pulled it towards myself on the right. And I'm going to grab a hold of my lobster clasp. And then I'm going to put that on the end of my bracelet. Okay, so now I just need to close that up. So I pulled it towards myself. Now I'm going to push it away from myself in order to close the door. And this time it made a little pop for me, which it didn't do that before. So I kind of like it because that means it's just you're right on it as far as getting it closed up. Now when I go to clasp my bracelet, it's grabbing a hold of this split ring, and so that's nice. So now I just need to add all of my charms. I'm just going to lay this chain back out in the vicinity of where I thought I'd like to kind of space out my charms. I'm just going to be adding these charms onto those soldered rings, and anywhere that I am putting a wrapped loop, I'm going to actually cut a slit in that ring that it's going on so that I don't have to add another little 4mm. And then the simple looped ones, I can just open these up like I did before to pop those onto the soldered rings without cutting them. So here is the bracelet and the earrings. The earrings are 2 inches, a little bit over 2 inches long as far as the dangle. I'd say maybe 2.5 inches when you include the ear wire. This is the bracelet where I use the split ring and the lobster clasp here to close that off. And then I put all of the little dangles. I just spaced out the dangles to where I like them. You can do this in a variety of colors. Obviously, I'm going for the fall look here. If I were going to do a necklace, I would just maybe have about an 8 to 10 inch portion of the leaves and then just attach that to a standard chain for the rest of the length of your necklace. I wouldn't want a necklace completely full of these leaves and crystals all around my neck. I think that would just be too uncomfortable to wear. If you enjoyed this fall project, please give me a thumbs up, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Happy fall, y'all!